I'm here to interview Prince William County's entrepreneur, Bill Golden. Well, good morning, Bill. How you
Good
doing?
morning. It's a great day, as always, to be with you and having coffee.
Always a pleasure to come to your studio and see what's new. Now, the reason I'm here is, of course, this morning the Northern Virginia Telework Council appointed you its chairman for 2013, and that sounded like really exciting news. And as soon as I heard, I wanted to come over and find out what your plans were for the year. So can you tell me a little bit about
Well, sure.
what
One
you
of the
plan to do?
things that we're doing, and you as the original founder, have been involved in telework for a long time, even before I got involved. We've been talking about telework, and telework's important. That tends to have a federal government spin on it. But really, the applicability of telework technologies, business concepts, business organization, business services applies to almost everything that happens. And I like to use the example of an auto mechanic. There is no reason that you can't go out to your car and using an app on your iPhone or whatever you use, be able to document, photograph, share everything you have with an auto mechanic somewhere in the world and say, I need services. They use the internet to identify, to provide prices, to find parts, etc., to schedule, and they're out there in your driveway. So, we can begin at that very local level, but our focus and my focus for 2013 is to pursue an agenda of jobs, 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 because we can talk about technologies all we want in public policy, but we really need to think about how do we make this relate to money in someone's pocket. And our economy is changing, and money in someone's pocket is going to be a very important topic in the year ahead.
Well, I've heard nothing but good things about Prince William and its economy. We've got the lowest unemployment rate in the state, second lowest in the country, I believe. Why all of a sudden do you care about jobs, jobs, jobs?
Well, for me, I've cared about jobs for a while, and really since about 2009, 2010, I've been trying to push this agenda of jobs, 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 because the economy was on a track, having reached the point where we're at, and there will be many challenges in the year ahead. The economy has been on the track it's been for a long time. It was a matter of at what point are we unable to keep bailing out the economy. So jobs, 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 I guess regrettably, we've reached the point we no longer can bail out the economy. And so now people are willing to listen to my mantra of jobs, 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 and to give it a thought, because we just have such a challenging year ahead. When Congress made the debt deal in August of 2011, they got $1.4 trillion worth of additional money that they could buy additional services with. But what a lot of Americans don't realize is that they raised the debt limit enough and gave permission to actually spend beyond that, and we had. As of January, or as end of year for 2012, we actually had spent $2.4 trillion. So now we're talking about an economy to where we're haggling over cuts of 100 billion, 110 billion, and saying that that could derail our economy. What is 110 billion when we're talking about we borrowed 2.4 trillion? We really have major issues. So jobs, jobs, jobs is important, because Prince William County, in my opinion, the story that many people don't want to hear, mostly because they haven't given thought or they don't know what the options are, the story that most people do not want to hear is that overwhelmingly Prince William County, Virginia, has a false economy. It has an artificial economy. It has an economy based upon being within 20 miles of Washington, D.C., and 3 major military bases, and 10 out of the 14 intelligence agencies, and being a logistics hub for the Department of Defense, and having the Pentagon 19 miles away. All of that money really that pays for Prince William to exist. 10% of the entire Metro Washington, D.C. federal workforce lives in Prince William County. And that's per the Prince William County Economic Development Office. So, and you know, having been involved in telework, I believe it's 62% of all working adults leave the county each day. So that's like a double crisis. Not only is the funding for how we're employed threatened, but those jobs don't even exist within the county. They're outside of the county, the great majority. So when people say that we're at 8th or 9th and, or whatever, those numbers do not take into account that those jobs and that money and those incomes have nothing to do with the economic base of Prince William County.
Well, you know, I'm one of those guys myself. I commuted downtown for years, and part of that highly compensated crowd that got made money outside of the county. And where are the jobs going to be in the future? I mean, why is it suddenly we have to worry about jobs, jobs, jobs? Government's been growing forever. Where are these jobs?
Well, the jobs, where are the jobs in the future? Really, I think that what we have to do is hold a discussion and talk about how communities function. How do jobs come about? You know, I provide services to you, you provide services to me. That's a different economic basis within Prince William County. We have some challenges. Number one, we really don't have an economy that provides services internal to the community. And there are some very hard numbers to go with that. For example, if you were to look at the state average of people employed in various professions, not just jobs, but professions, Prince William County is well below the state in management professionals, high-level finance, engineering, science, mathematical skills. So if you take into consideration that Virginia as a whole is a fairly rural state, and yet Prince William County ranks below the state in average in these high-level professions, it really comes down to we do not have an economy that provides services where we buy from each other. What we do have, and we just blow away the state when it comes to jobs in retail, real estate, and why? Because we're basically an economy where the economy is buying things and selling things. We don't create, we don't manufacture, we don't assemble. We do not even put intellectual capital into design of things, really, for export. So we deal in retail and real estate because we are a bedroom community providing homes and basic services. So we also have a two-part economy. We're dependent upon Washington, D.C. economy where those high salaries are, and then really there's not a lot in the middle. So if the average American professional nationwide, I believe, makes about $44,000 per year, Prince William at the lower end, the average is actually lower than that. So we have really two, and when people talk about where we're up here in the middle, it's because we have an extraordinary economy where we have incredibly high-paid individuals, which work hard for the money, no doubt, but we do not have a functioning economy to where if the money tap were turned off, we as a county could function quite well on our own because we have something going for us.
Now, I have a question for you. We have all these high-paid people that make us, the latest number I heard was the 7th wealthiest county in the nation. Yet we lack these skills that you mentioned. What do these people do?
Well, one thing I recommend that they do is check their savings account.
No, what do they do professionally?
What do they do professionally? They do about everything imaginable. Prince William is really a crown jewel in the country when it comes to intellectual capital.
Uh-huh.
So Prince William, one of the areas that, let's take a master's degree. A master's degree really is a good indicator of the intellectual capital of a county. Prince William County blows away most of the state when it comes to having a population with master's degrees. I believe of working adults, and these numbers are several years old, but of working adults, almost 7% of working adults in Prince William County have a master's degree. That's just an extraordinary number. And when you take into consideration the number of folks that have bachelor's degree, we definitely blow away most of Virginia and just about all of the country. So we have an incredible intellectual capital. And we are heavily, these people have backgrounds in, they do have high-level finance, information of every type. They are software developers and hardware developers. They are engineers. They are scientists and chemists and all the, anything that you can assign to the word STEM. The social sciences, et cetera. We could overwhelm the rest of Virginia almost, and certainly much of the nation. What we have to do is find an engine, a local engine for these people to become attached to.
Interesting. Now, how does this local engine going to look like?
Well, that is a concern to me, and one of the reasons that I'm focused on a jobs, jobs, jobs agenda is that engine could look several ways, and one of the challenges we have to do, and this is why I want to expand the discussion, because that engine is going to change the way people get their benefits, their health care. It's going to change, we have to talk about cost of living. Because if you were to work local, one of the first things, no matter how smart you are, and I'm talking about the majority, if you're going to work local, your expenses are going to drop. Number one, because companies are going to be focused, you know, are they selling a service, or are they selling a product, or are they selling something that can be licensed, such as an idea? Apple makes its money. It's a very small company in the sense of how many American-based employees it has. And yet, Apple literally employs millions worldwide because what it does is it takes a unique idea and licenses it. Another good example is Vizio, just a huge, it's one of the few electronics companies that are American-based and build stuff within the U.S. to some degree. But the entire company, which is a multiple billion-dollar company, is known as one of the major manufacturers of electronic devices, tablets, televisions, you name it. They only have approximately 300 employees in the U.S. So one of the challenges that we have to deal with is if you're going to put intellectual capital to work, we need to realize that we're going to fundamentally change the economy, because intellectual ideas, if they're free-flowing and they don't know market boundaries, many of the things that we do with that intellectual capital will leave the county. That assumes that we don't have a basis for it to begin with, and that's what I want to talk about. How do we harness this intellectual capital? And we have to take all these other things into consideration too, because the moment we focus on this, then other people are going to go, you know, that's a great idea. Let's tap into that, or let's underbid Prince William. And so we do not have a functional way to export our intellectual capital at the moment, or even an engine for people to work into. But I do have ideas that I would do if I were to win the lottery tomorrow. For example, I live in Dale City. One of the ideas that I have is I would form a concept that I call the 3 villages of Dale City. If you're going to put smart people to work and they're just not moving information or data around, you need to give them an environment to where they have the tools that they can use, an environment to where they can interact with other people. And by interact with other people, I mean, as you're working on a concept, who do you reach out to? Who do you get mentoring from? Sitting around a table is important. You know, I come up with an idea and it sounds great to me, but you say, you know, Bill, have you ever considered, and we do this all the time. So what I would do is form basically 3 gigantic, as hubs, 3 gigantic coffee bars that have high speed.
Got my attention with that.
Yes, and we will have multiple flavors of coffee, and decaf if you've been there for too long. But we would form 3 large coffee bars with tables and monitors and places to work. And the idea is, it's almost like an entrepreneur club. But we need it distributed throughout the community, because if we're, and this goes back to the original idea of telework, taking people off the roads, giving them more time to focus, these centers could be placed in a place like Dale City where you could walk. If we had one down towards the Ashdale area where the Kmart is, we had another centrally where Dale Boulevard and Minnieville intersect. And if we had one in the Mapledale area, or even just across Hoadley in Hoadley Road at the end of Dale Boulevard, these are places to where many of the smart people we're talking about could easily walk to. They don't need their cars, they don't need parking, they don't have to worry about catching buses or transportation schedules. They just walk. But there are people that a little bit farther away, we could have rotating buses that go through, whether it's once an hour or once every half hour, and they form loops throughout the larger community to make it possible for people to use these centers. Now, the centers really just act as a hub because much of the stuff you can do at home. But the ability to get together, to share ideas, to maybe use different technology. So you're a big iPad, you're a big Apple user, period. But there are other things which Apple has. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to go to an entrepreneur center or a Dale City Entrepreneur Center and to be able to say, I've got this idea, now I want to see how this works on the 27-inch Apple. I want to see how this works on the Apple Mini. Well, rather than you having to shell out big bucks for all this, because when you're not using this equipment, someone else is, I want to see how this works on the iPad and on a Google device. And of course, different displays. Rather than everyone going out and buying all these things, if we had 3 entrepreneur centers that's part of Dale City or Prince William spread throughout the, we could not only share ideas and opinions about the quality of coffee and cookies that we're eating while we're working, but how we interact with devices, etc. And but that's all about expenses and managing those as well.
Well, now, I know that Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling has been going around the world talking about what Virginia has to offer, and you're talking about harnessing our intellectual capital either at home or at these centers to do things for people or ideas. When we're talking about jobs, where do you see for these technical folks that come up with these ideas, these jobs actually occurring or being created?
The jobs need to occur and be created here in our community. So, for example, if you were to go to freelance.com, just one example, or guru.com, you will find that you can buy almost any technical service in the world and have it delivered to where you are. And let's just take coffee cups, for example. And I know you have used a thing called Cafe Press. If I were to develop a unique coffee cup, it could be a healthcare cup. So, and I know this sounds strange, but let's say I develop this unique coffee cup and it tests my saliva as I drink, and the cup would change if I have a chemical change within my body. So it could be a healthcare cup as well.
Interesting.
We don't need to manufacture that right here, but what we do need to do is to get basic product development, get the idea licensed and protected, and that now becomes a product that can be bought on a one-by-one basis over the internet. So we need to get the jobs here, and we need people to think differently about what it even means to work. Because the idea of, most people's lives are organized around, I must work 40 hours per week. And it's not that 40 hours is optimum, it's just that they have spent themselves into a financial cycle that requires working at least 40 hours to pay off their life. I mean, that's the way they spend money. They say
it's a cultural paradigm.
It's a cultural model that says, look, I make this much money because I'm required to go to work for 40 hours. Therefore, I can spend up to this much and borrow this much, and I can pay this much back theoretically because I'm going to continue to work 40. In the world of a different world, the reality is you're probably only going to work maybe 28 hours. Or you have a menu of services. So if you need a software developer, and that software developer has unique skills and they can charge, and I pay this locally. I had a young man that I trained on how to use cold fusion. And I had told him, you know, if you take these skills, you can probably make at least $100 or more. When he worked for me and when I trained him locally as his mentor, I paid $30, which actually is good locally. He recently did a project for me to where he charged me $110. And I'm thinking I should have gotten a deal because I trained you. But he got $110 because he can virtually sell those services anywhere, and that's $110 per hour. Now, I don't know how many hours he got that week, but he does other things. So if you have a menu of services, and that's what we need, in some ways we need to go back to a village mentality, not from the 20th century, but from the 19th century of, I live and work in my village or town. You need this, I need this, what is the market value? And of course, the cost, the local costs for everything are based upon how much our costs are. So you could have a menu. Well, if you need me to do software development, I know my value is $110 per hour and I can get it. But on the other hand, I have 5 free hours and you want me to do this and that's $40 per hour.
Sure.
So we need people to think differently, and cost management and cost of living issues are just as important in talking about jobs.
Now, it sounds like these jobs, if we're harnessing intellectual capital and technology that literally uncouples these new free agents from one specific employer, it sounds like with the right infrastructure or tools, they could sell their skills anywhere in the world. And
That's
still
true.
Live and work right here in Dale City.
And that is the future. And it is a future that will arrive whether we want it to or not. Now, my premise is we are not ready for it. If suddenly tomorrow you had a large group of very smart people unemployed, their major challenge is just to figure out how to pay their bills because they are not going to be able to export their capital. A couple of reasons. Number one, if they were to try and compete on guru.com or whatever else, more than likely these people haven't even given any thought as to how to define their service. They have no idea how to price their service. And the pricing, what they would rudely find out is that they are competing against smart people, I don't want to say from the middle of nowhere, but there are a number of high technology organizations in North Dakota and Iowa and Idaho and other places that are popping up where, because they have lower cost of living, their technology people, their technology professionals can compete sometimes at half the rate that locally and do the same quality. In fact, you have people from here that have learned how this works and now they're moving to their dream home or wherever else. And just as a quick side story, I used to be one of those 40-hour people, except I worked 60 hours per week, got 40 hours of pay. And back in 1996, I took an extended trip to Japan. Now in Japan, they had begun to think about information flow, and they didn't really know how it would work, but the government of Japan funded the installation of DSL from one end of Japan to the other. Quite literally one day, I was having trouble connecting and working on a website, and I asked everywhere, and they said, oh no, there's no internet cafe, there's none of this. And I said, well, that's backwards. And they said, no, not backwards. You go and plug in your device right there. And it's like, you just plug it in. They go, yes, we have high-speed internet everywhere. It's up to you to use it. So that infrastructure can be very important. Understanding how the infrastructure works and how to use it. But I was in the middle of nowhere, Japan, in Fukushima, in northern Japan, literally surrounded by rice fields and mountains, and had high-speed internet. And this is back in 1996.
Now that implies that, I understand what you're saying about the transition and perhaps people don't know how to do that. That implies there might be some public policy role in preparing folks for what's next, and perhaps an infrastructure role in ensuring that the county has the infrastructure to allow people to rethink how they work and who they work for.
there is a huge role for public policy. And because public policy, let's take it at a very simple level. If people become detached from large corporate systems, whether government or large companies, and in our case, most of the large companies are dependent upon the government, one of the first issues you're going to have is healthcare. Because these people overwhelmingly have healthcare packages that come via their employer, which are mandated, and the costs are covered by the federal government. So if we had a change in the workforce, one of the first things that would happen is we would have large groups of people, many of them unable to get health care coverage on their own. So how would we deal with health care?
Interesting you mention that, because, for example, we have a high percentage of retired military who are uniquely positioned for the world that we're describing. I am actually part of that world myself. So I wonder if we need public policy to focus on our retired folks because they're such low-hanging fruit.
Well,
and retired civil servants. So we have a lot of retired people with all this.
We have, so that is a plus, a major positive in that we do have a large group of our population in Prince William County that
makes us unique.
That makes us unique because we don't have to worry about health care per se. But we also have a significant number of people that have not retired out of the military or federal government. And with health care costs being as expensive as they are, you know, so we're not, that's why we have to talk about our environment and our cost of living, because when things happen, and a lot of people don't realize that, that jobs in Northern Virginia, here we are in early 2013, jobs in Northern Virginia only last year reached their 2007 levels from the crash.
I did not know that.
Because as people lost jobs, they really had no choice but to leave. It was too expensive to live here. And if you can't find a job, you really have only one choice, leave. Now, Prince William County, so you got to be careful about numbers.
Our populations went up.
Yeah, our population
doubled in 10 years.
Sure. But our population didn't grow up because this is a great place to live. And I love Prince William County dearly. But those numbers didn't go up just because it's a great place to live and a great place to get a job. Many of those jobs moved here due to BRAC. You had almost 34,000 jobs go into Quantico, Virginia, here in Prince William County. You had approximately 25,000 jobs move into Fort Belvoir, which sits in the northeast corner of Prince William County. You had almost, I believe, 7,000 or 9,000 jobs move along the Route 28 corridor. And you had a number of jobs move into Fauquier. So we were the direct beneficiary, because if you look at those numbers and you think about the total numbers, and then you figure that the average family, because you know, when you move a job, many of these people are going to be married, and the average family has 2 kids. So I believe if you look and you say our population grew just over 200,000 some, and you add in the spouse and the 2 kids average per family, that means about 50,000 jobs got created somewhere, which is due primarily to BRAC.
Now let me give you a scenario and kind of get your, you know, I've always had this vision of a fundamental reset in Northern Virginia, as evidenced by, driven by sequestration, the recent appointees to Department of Defense and CIA indicate a bias towards staying out of conflicts, and a general downsizing in government in general will cause a reset to Northern Virginia's economy that will cause a lot of people to leave, a lot of those high-paying jobs to go away, and for those, and to rebuild our economy, we're going to have to rethink how we work and leverage technology to sell our unique intellectual capital anywhere in the world. And that's a public policy and infrastructure issue. Not that it's easy, but any job without health care is better than no job without health care.
Correct.
And there'll be pain. Housing prices will drop. Tax base will go down, which we have to plan for. But
and that is a huge public policy issue there, too.
Yeah, but how does that scenario strike you of trying to rise from the ashes by being first to market for all the smart people we have to sell those that opt to stay, to sell their intellectual capital wherever it's needed?
Well, first to market is very important. because it's all about a brand. At the end of the day, you really, and you've been in business yourself a long time, if something can become a commodity, or if someone can learn something, if we do not have an infrastructure and if we do not have some concept, and I'm not saying that there's a clear-cut concept, but if we do not have a clear-cut concept as to how we're going to tie this together, then others would just blow us away. And by clear-cut concept, let me give you a couple of examples. In North Dakota, if you look at the 10 largest corporations in the state, 8 of those are in healthcare, records management, medical transcription, etc. Because North Dakota said, what can we do? How can we build an infrastructure? How do we take state funding or whatever we do to encourage a given industry, and how do we maximize that? So rather than diffuse their approach, they took on a common focus, and now, whether most people realize it or not, if it has to deal with your medical records in almost any way, somehow it ends up in North Dakota.
Sounds like a telework job.
It is a telework job. Most of these people, because they have not the best weather in North Dakota, they built an infrastructure, they took a focus, and most of the people working in these 8, and there are more companies, of course, companies in North Dakota work out of their homes. In Iowa, in the mid-2000s said, what can we do? You know, Iowa has the highest literacy rate, and Iowa said, how can we become a player? And Iowa began to focus on medical research, bio-research, and by taking the workforce and using their schools and universities, they were able to focus the Iowan citizens' attention and education and work with the different employers. So now Iowa is a major leader in bio-research, medical research. But it's mostly done because of the wonder of the internet and connecting people.
Now that's interesting, because we talk about our intellectual capital, our high degree of a number of master's degrees. I know from my business experience that people in Washington, D.C. build some of the most complex and technically challenging systems in the world and have unique skills in big data, data mining, analytic, things that Fortune 500 companies kill from. So perhaps we could become the leaders in selling these very esoteric skills to companies in China, Europe, or to the companies that are employing all of those healthcare documenters.
Sure, or even companies that are in our area. You know, so here's a challenge, and this is a public policy and a philosophic challenge. If you look at the S&P 500, over 400 are headquartered in the Metro DC area. But very few people in our community work for any of those S&P 500 unless it's a defense company or defense contractor or federal government contractor. So, and I'll give you another example. So I recruit for around the world. Recently, we had, in the last year, we had Capital One come in and want to be able to use our services for our company, intelligencecareers.com, where we support national security, yada, 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 around the world. And our approach to dealing with Capital One was to ask, why do you want to use our service? I mean, and we're happy to take your money, we're happy to recruit, but we don't exactly have a lot of financial specialists. And they said, well, here's the perspective. There's not a lot of people that have a lot of financial perspectives. We need people that know how to think on their feet, that have a structured approach to information, et cetera, and we believe that people coming out of the Department of Defense and former intelligence analysts and the very people that you recruit, that if they would make a career transition, that they would do great. And Capital One remains a major customer of ours today.
It's a pretty good insight to me, based on my experience. That's
but this is a company headquartered in McLean, Virginia, sits not too far from us, but probably almost no one in our community would have thought about Capital One in any way, shape, or form, because they're focused on the employers that exist in our community, which tend to be pretty much federal government, contractors or defense contractors, et cetera. Microsoft has used us. We have a large company called Yo Staffing that does a lot of virtual, if you need it, we can find it, we can connect it, short-term contracts. And that's another perspective that we have to talk about too, is jobs of the future probably are not careers as you know them. Now, if you're a designer of some piece of technology or an implementer or integrator, your career deals with the technology, not with an employer. An employer may employ you for 3 to 4 or 5 years, maybe longer, but probably not. It could be 3, 6, 9, 12 months, and people need to learn to think about their livelihood in those terms, which means they have to be findable. They need to know who to go find. They have to know what their current market value is, because it does change in the commercial world. It changes dramatically, whereas most people in Prince William County believe they know what they're worth because they are in a structured environment to where how much they make actually is written in contracts when their employer negotiates a 5-year contract. But the commercial world is not. It's fish of the day, and there are very few guarantees. So we have to look at it that way.
Interesting. Now, one of the things that always appealed to me about your business model was under one vision of the world, where really what we need to do are tie opportunities to people and have an engine in between. It seemed like that's part of the solution. I know you do that for bad neighborhoods and a very
Right.
esoteric domain, but Capital One interests me because it demonstrates that this concept might scale and leverage the fact that we have one of the most efficient engines already here in Prince William County. Have you considered expanding your model to this virtual world of which we speak?
We have, and we have an effort called usajobzoo.com, which is not yet an overnight success, even after playing with it for 5 years.
It's about to emerge.
Yeah, you know, and I've told you we've been experimenting with the cloud and some other things because I believe that this is going to be our year, and if not, certainly next one will. But I'm preparing to scale up. But the challenge as to why it is not yet an overnight success after 5 years is philosophic. There are too many people who believe and are hoping and just think that 2007 will happen again. The way our economy was before the Great Recession, and despite all the changes in between, whether it's government or people or to some degree organizations are changing, but there are too many people who do not want to change, do not want to even think about what the future could be, because what they want is for 2007. They want the good times to come back. And my basic message is, it's not going to happen.
That's interesting, because that makes me think of the hype cycle. We're going through the Gartner Group hype cycle. We're going through a fundamental change to our economy driven by events we can't control. We'll get early adapters, of which you are one of those, who realize, well, things are changing. I need to change also. And then we'll get those people who let things bleed for a while, or the bleeding edge, the leading edge, and we'll move over. And then the late adapters who gets whatever's left. Right. It seems like maybe this group, the Northern Virginia Telework Council, might have an educational role in sharing what's coming and harvesting those early adapters.
There needs to be a huge education role, and probably the council, as it leads in this, we are going to learn as much or more than we actually put out there. But let me talk about some fundamental changes. One of the predicted changes, and I don't know which major group it was, whether Forrester, there are a number of groups. One of the, and this is not exactly a credit card, this is my Safeway card, but let's pretend it's a credit card at the moment. One of the predictions for 2013 is your cell phone will capture more than 50% of all financial transactions as a method of payment by the end of the year over a credit card.
I use that for my Starbucks now, yeah.
So, already our cell phone has replaced ticket agents at airports.
Yeah, I've done that.
It's replaced a number of other things. So even within the commercial economy, to where we have, so we talk about the high level, this is where I want very much to focus on Joe and Jane Average, because their life is going to change. Let's say you work in a bank and your job is just to process, not just, but you make your living processing credit cards. If you knew that the prediction is over 50% of your business will disappear in the next 12 months, what does that mean for you as an individual? What does that mean for you as a bank or financial institution? What does it mean for merchants who actually are focused on credit cards rather than maximizing business? Because how many merchants, if you were to walk in and say, I want that now, here's my phone, how do I charge it? They're going to look at you like you're crazy. So there is a huge education component.
Andy Grove's Only the Paranoid Survive is devoted to this issue. In other words, those people that recognize that change, like the person that processes credit cards, they have to realize, well, now, am I processing credit cards or credit transactions? And the people that evolve. Yeah, that's a great line of reasoning. If you haven't read that book, highly recommend it for this conversation.
Sounds like a great book. I haven't read it, but
I've required reading.
You know, I try to keep up on what's going on and try to stay one step ahead.
Yeah.
2 steps is better, but 1 step is acceptable.
No. Now let me ask you a question. What are your plans? Who's working with you? Who are you going to tap? How do you see it? What major events do you have unfolding in this exciting 2013 year?
The first 6 months of the year, and I haven't thought about the second, because I figure we're going to discover things as we go along.
That's a good strategy.
My goal is by the end of January in Prince William County to form an advisory board of 10 professionals that represent unique aspects of the community, of the business community. And by business community, that also includes government. So rather than put together a panel of, and we will welcome participation by everyone, but the advisory panel or advisory board, I would like to have someone that represents education, represents manufacturing, represents retail. I want to take a forensic approach to our economy, because if part of the education process is we need to get people to think different, we need to figure out how they're thinking to begin with.
Role for government?
A huge role for government. In fact, I don't believe that government drives economics or should drive economics.
That's 2 of us.
But government plays a huge role through public policy. Government is a player whether anyone wants it to be or not, whether it's through tax credits or streamlining paperwork. Like some of the things government could do is completely move almost anything dealing with small business to the web. There is no reason to have to go to any government office to get a business license. You can get your driver's license through the web. Why can't you get a business license? I mean, you can provide your documentation. You can incorporate on the web, but yet locally you have to go and stand in line to get a business license. Not acceptable.
Have you talked to anybody in local government lately?
This past Tuesday, I was very lucky to have a chance to sit down and be able to chat with Chairman Corey Stewart here at Prince William County, and to get some ideas as to how what he thought. And you know, I'm not going to go into our discussion per se, but I'd like to say that Chairman Stewart was very friendly and for a long time has talked about the idea of we need to think about our economy and how we interact is in almost a village style, to where we have services and we need to realize how money flows. So Chairman Stewart was very supportive of the idea of exploring where things are going. And I hope to be able to meet again with Chairman Stewart within about a month and put together a short presentation that not only says, here are the challenges, because you know, lots of people can say, here are the challenges. What's important is to say, is there a path forward? What are some recommended courses of action? What could we do to discover the data points, as it were? And that's my plan with Chairman Stewart. So January, by the end of January, I'd like to have an advisory board in place. Uh, by mid to late February, I would like to have met with Chairman Stewart. And of course, the advisory board will play a huge role in this. In March and April, I really see us as exploring options as to how would we really adopt an agenda of education. On January 25th, I'm actually giving a presentation at the Prince William Chamber of Commerce on the use of technology to enable telework. That they have a technology expo, and I am one of the guest speakers of that.
I didn't know that.
And my, full schedule out there. So March and April, we're going to be in discovery fashion and putting together kind of this is what we believe can and should happen. And by May, what I'd really like to be able to do is to form locally or regionally a jobs summit. Now, a lot of times you hold a summit to where people, they come together to say that this is a good thing to talk about, so they talk about talking about it. By May, what I would like to have done is we have already organized through March and April people who do have interest in the areas that we've identified. So the summit really is a collection of panels and discussions to where we're looking to solidify where we believe we should be going. And we bring all the pieces together at the end of the summit. I don't see it as just a 1 day or 4 hour, but really a series of rolling events, maybe over 2, 3, 4 days. And we have some idea of a regional and Prince William battle plan at that point as we go forward.
Now, how often and where do you plan to meet?
The how often is at least meet once per month. The meeting will be virtual. So just as we can handle, we have our virtual communications network already in place. We can meet just like we're here, and if you want to come meet me in person, that's fine, but there's no reason that you should have to leave home. We need to eat our own dog food. When we talk about connectivity and when we talk about work should not require having to think real hard about transportation, and work should not require allocating an amount of your time just to travel, because that's money lost. Whether it's physical or insurance on your car or gasoline or wear and tear or just pure time, that is money lost. So we will be meeting virtually at least once per month, but I would like to have some committees and sub-panels set up, and we meet at least once a month in those as well, if not twice, and we will provide an infrastructure to where everyone can meet virtually.
Now, if I want to learn more or follow your progress or get a hold of you and say I want to participate, where do I go? Who do I contact?
We have set up 2 blogs to make this possible. The first is called usateleworkjobs.com. And the second, which will focus on kind of philosophic issues of what does work mean, is usajobsblog.com. These 2 blogs will be they will be interconnected, so whether you're looking for advice, you're looking for technology, business case outcomes, because there's a lot of good information available out there. Prince William Magazine just this morning published a piece online that says, I believe it was something along the lines of 12 things that telework can do good for you, to your organization. And it really was short and to the point, but there are things that probably a lot of people have just never thought about. So we hope to connect you with others that are thinking about this, service providers, etc. So usajobsblog.com and usateleworkjobs.com. This is where we're going to be living online and the means that we'll use to communicate.
Great. Now, if I want to send you an email or one of the people that read this article want to play or try to get on the committee, can they find your email, how to contact you?
Yeah, if you go to either blog, you will find my email. But really, and I have many emails, the email that I'm going to use for all of this is wgolden at usajobzoo.com. And when we came up with the name USA Job Zoo some years ago, it was with the idea that work is kind of like a zoo. You have all kinds of animals and all kinds of, it's a zoo. And it's kind of a fun name, but it represents an idea. And so it is an established, usajobzoo.com itself is an established website that's out there. You can find jobs, but what you will find on any of our blogs, career blogs, and we run more than 140 currently, is hardcore information about where the industry's going, where there are trends and things that you need to be thinking about. And that's our goal with usateleworkjobs.com and usajobsblog.com.
Well, excellent. I think I've covered just about everything I can cover. Is there anything that you would like me to go away with that I have missed in the questions? If I could have asked you a question, what would that question have been?
I think we did a good job of the questions. The one thought that I'd like to leave everyone with is now is an incredibly important time to think about personal and corporate and social responsibility. Our economy is going to change, and ultimately, if it changes and you get left behind, you have no one to blame but yourself. Now, our social responsibility is to bring up the issue, to talk about the issue, to try and create an awareness, to create options, and that can be government, it can be private organizations. I've gone to local churches that actually run job seminars, and so there is a social component, and it doesn't have to be government driven. Government policy needs to think about the day after tomorrow, because all of these changes, there is the potential for major negative social impact as well, because if we don't get this right, my prediction is that incomes in the Northern Virginia area for at least a decade will continue to drop at the rate of 1% to 2% per year. That's not inflation dollars. That's real dollars that will just disappear. Pay raises should be minimal, yada, yada, yada. The point is there has to be a lot of personal responsibility in here, but our social responsibility and our corporate responsibility is we need to tell people. We need to help them think about what's coming, and unfortunately not a lot of that's happening.
Well, thank you for your time, Bill. Great interview.
Thank you.
I look forward to working with you in 2013 to educate the public and look for new models of how to connect people with work.
And I believe there's only good news out there.
Me too. Well, news is what we make it, and this has been good news.